Natalie Graeme, founder of Uncommon Creative Studio. Tell me what after work means for you.
Bit of difference. It's not necessarily relaxing, but definitely just trying to have a different vibe. Put the phone down, try and step away from the computer, which is easier said than done, because a lot of fun stuff, work and family stuff and home stuff happens on a computer as well. But I do try and step away from the screen.
Okay.
And just spend time with family usually, which sounds kind of
really nice.
Calm. It's not. It's a lot of fun.
Totally exhausting.
Yeah, but in a good way.
So you've been pretty lazy over the last year.
Oh yeah.
How's life feeling at the moment?
I mean, it's been a 6-year journey in building Uncommon to this point. And you kind of have a fantasy for what it's going to be, but ultimately you never know if that's going to be real or not. And then it started to really gain momentum. And then the deal we've just done with Havas and Vivendi has been really exciting. So fundamentally, we wanted to work with partners who really understood what we've been trying to build, and we're not done yet. We're far from it. And to partner with an entertainment company and people that really understand the power of creativity in all its forms is really exciting, and hopefully really exciting for the talent at Uncommon, but also for the industry.
You've said you're a people pleaser. I've actually never seen that, but I sort of want to delve into that. No, wait, that's...
You
Okay, I'm going to... Did you know that from an early age?
Yeah, I think I did. And I think at that point, when you're trying to work out what you want to do as a career or how you want to approach things, I think you're kind of looking for what you can learn from other people. Yeah. And so I think that's where it came from. I'm not subservient, I don't think, but I do recognise that through my career, I've definitely tried to work out how I can be helpful. And then I think the sweet spot is knowing when that's tipping over into being somebody's dog's body, and actually not being self-serving. But I think the ability to recognise that and hone your spidey sense as to what someone does or doesn't want is no bad thing.
I think as a leader, you often have to not be a people pleaser. And I think you sort of have to piss quite a few people off along the way. But maybe you've done it in a completely different way.
I think you'd have to ask the team about that.
They're coming.
Yeah. Honestly, it is all about the people. Otherwise, what are you doing it for? And particularly in our industry, it's all about talent. And if they're not happy, well, unless you think you can do it on your own, mate, then good luck. Yeah. Because quite frankly, it is about bringing people with you. Certainly what I've learned over the years is that if you don't bring those people with you, then there's a problem.
People probably didn't realise that 15, 20 years ago, though.
No.
I mean, we started off in a very different world of advertising where you were led by fear, and you probably weren't made to feel very valuable.
No.
And now, luckily, we're living in a different world, which I think is exciting to people coming into the industry.
Totally, yeah.
Leadership can be quite a lonely place. You don't get all of those pats on the back like you used to do. So where do you get your advice and friendship from now?
I'm really lucky because I started Uncommon with Nils and Lucy, and I definitely couldn't and wouldn't have wanted to do it on my own. I think because we'd worked together before, we know each other's strengths, and we're very good at calling each other out on, when we might need a bit more support, and getting ahead of that, hopefully. So it kind of happens naturally inside work, interestingly, but we create the time for that. We have a slot every week that we do not miss, where we come together, and we've done that since the start. And it always starts with how's everyone doing, make sure that we're checking in with each other. The three of us are very different, which is what I think makes it a really good team. But it also means that we can cover an awful lot of ground individually, but if we don't come together, we could have gone quite far apart from each other. So we do regularly try and make sure that we're checking in.
Protecting that time has got to be vital for the three of you.
It helps that it's three of us as well, right? So if two people are on opposite ends, then there's always someone in the middle to mediate.
Not two's company, three's a crowd, none of that.
No, and also the team's an awful lot bigger now as well. So it's not just the three of us, and that's very exciting, and that brings different dynamics. But I think the three of us have always tried to protect that time.
You and I were both lucky enough to fly off to Amsterdam at about the ripe old age of 25. Do you look back at the move now and go, oh my God, that was nuts? Like I moved to a country I didn't know with no friends, no family.
I had a lot of blank faces when I said to the guys at Fallon back in the day, I was like, I'm going to go to Amsterdam. They're like, what? Why are you doing that? I got so much more out of it than just a career move. I went because of career, kind of, because I felt London was becoming quite myopic and we were just caring about what the agency down the road was doing. And I felt that was too insular, and I don't know. I think it was more gut than anything, but I definitely didn't feel like that was particularly interesting. And I thought, right, okay, I want to do something for me. And so I think the ability to be able to go to a different country and still know the job and still be able to work in English, which was obviously a massive privilege. But I think it's just good to take yourself outside of the day-to-day and scare yourself a bit, right? That spontaneity of like, what about this? And if it hadn't worked, what's the worst that's going to happen? Honestly, doesn't feel very me when I look back. I was quite square, but I learned a lot.
I always encourage anyone to get international experience, but it's becoming really hard. Network agencies don't move people around as much as they used to. Visas are becoming really, really difficult, or, in Amsterdam at the moment, there's, not that many jobs. How can we push the agenda of international experience a little bit more?
I think it's really tricky because, obviously we don't work on a network model. And I think some of those models have really been put through their paces as to really what value are they delivering. So I think it is quite tricky. I think the ability to get references from different places and recognise that the same work that works in one country isn't going to work in another, I think that's invaluable. If nothing else, it just opens your eyes to different cultures. And I think nothing quite beats being able to live in a different country to really understand why. That's why we've opened in America, because it was great to do a lot of work for American companies from London, and we've done that for many years. And it's not until you're actually physically in the market that you can really get into some of the nuance of some of those cultural references. And it obviously comes from what the client demand is, right? I think there's still an awful lot of opportunity to go shoot in different countries, although a lot's being done through AI and remote shooting. But, there's an awful lot of incredible hubs in wild and wonderful places to go and shoot. But I don't think the ability to go and work out of a more local office is there as much.
I took a promotion before I was ready once, and actually it's one of the worst things I could have done for my confidence. So are there any points of your career where you wish you'd slowed down a little bit?
Yeah, I certainly, when I went to Amsterdam, actually, I was promoted probably too fast. And it was circumstance. Back to being that people pleaser, I kind of took on responsibilities that weren't necessarily mine because there was a gap and I wanted to help. And before you know it, you end up being promoted into a role. And so that was a happy thing that happened of me being a people pleaser at that point. But I think as a result, I hadn't honed or really observed, actually. I hadn't been in the industry that long to really observe different leadership styles. And I think that was a problem because I was then mimicking what I thought leadership meant and what I'd seen happen before. And I hadn't really explored my own style or knew that there could be a different one.
Right.
So I was a bit of a sledgehammer, and I got it kind of wrong in quite a few places. And in hindsight and looking back, I know I did. And so I learned a lot, and that's always a good lesson to chalk up. But I think it did, like you were saying, I think it can sometimes knock your confidence. I had to spend quite a bit of time exploring what my management style would be.
So let's talk about balance, because you do take on a lot, probably the most of any of my friends, and you shoulder a lot of responsibility. Do you ever wish for just a quieter life?
No.
Sort of thought you might say that.
You're not the only person that tells me I take on too much. And I think sometimes I do have to know when enough is enough.
Yeah.
But equally, I think I'd be really bored if there was an alternative. With Uncommon, I feel like we've only just really got started. There's just so much more we want to do.
How cool is that after 6 years?
It's great. We've kind of renewed our vows with this deal and now we're off to the races on other stuff as part of it that we want to do, which is great. I don't know what this says about my psyche. I should know. I did psychology as a degree, but I've always left companies when I got comfortable. And a lot of that is because I think our industry is really vibrant and there's so much to learn. And at the point where I felt I was having groundhog year, I just felt like I wanted to go and explore and do more things. So back to your question of am I taking on too much? I'm quite good at switching off. I think I was surprised even myself when we started Uncommon. A lot of my closest, nearest and dearest were really worried that I would go pop and I wouldn't be able to take it all on.
Right.
Or that I wouldn't know when to stop. Mm-hmm. And actually, weirdly, as soon as we started, I realised that if I didn't have energy for it, no one else did. Nothing was going to happen if I wasn't okay. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the first time I took my work-life balance a lot more seriously and was a lot more aware of what I had capacity to take on. You don't ever switch off when it's your own company, really. Yes. At the same time as I don't think we should necessarily switch off. That's a difficult thing to say, but in our industry, we should always be on the hunt for exciting references and interesting people and things we could be doing. But also that is what makes our industry fun, because we can have some fun in our day-to-day and pick and almost be working while we're playing. And I think that's what you and I learned in Amsterdam, right? But equally, when it comes to answering emails, doing phone calls, obviously you have to set those boundaries. But I learned very late in life that I had to be the one to set them. Because I think sometimes our industry can encroach. It needs to be the individual that says enough.
What's the best piece of advice you could give those about to start their career in advertising?
To work out what it is you bring to the table. And I think very often people coming into the industry look at the industry and see paths up in how they rise through the creative department or the account management department without recognising that it's actually totally fine to be creative with your career path and to come into the industry. And some of the best people I've worked with started in one discipline and have moved into another. And I think it's very easy to think that you've locked yourself in by wherever you started. But I think our industry is very open because you don't have to necessarily go and get schooled in a particular discipline for people to move around. And so find the bit that you really are interested in and that you love, rather than falling in love with the opportunity of promotion.
Finish this sentence. If I wasn't in advertising, I would be a...
fishmonger? Yeah. I was possibly the most diligent fishmonger you've ever had in Waitrose. Back in the days. It was my first ever job.
And your first ever love?
Not my first ever love, but I'm quite competent at it.
We're done.
Hey!
She's good, isn't she?
Okay. Oh, I've got a cramp in my foot. Hang on a minute.